everybody, and welcome to another edition of A Little Perspective. This is the SuperMoms edition. This month is May, and it is Mother's Day, and I love honoring women. It is my favorite thing to do, and the woman that we have with us today certainly deserves all of the honors. Miss Amber Olson is with us today. She is the owner of Next Staff, and more importantly, she is Willow's mother. Willow was diagnosed with MSD at 2 years old. MSD is an ultra rare condition, and Amber has just hit the ground running, trying to find a cure, doing everything she can to save her daughter's life and others who have the condition. So I'm so honored to have you on here with us to tell us more about what you're doing, what the condition is, and what we can do to help. So why don't we start with you just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, and thank you for having me. So I do own Next Staff. I guess kind of going back, I am originally from Missoula, Montana, and I moved down to the coast, I think it was 23 years ago, after I graduated from college. And I started my staffing business in 2007. So it's been 13 years, I think. And I have my husband, who's retired Navy, and I have 3 girls. They are now 18, 14, and Willow is 7. I am very familiar with entrepreneurship. I, run the business a while, and I kind of had that figured out under control. And then in 2016, my 2-year-old Willow, she was having difficulty walking. She could walk, but she walked like Frankenstein, and she started to stumble a little bit, and she's never spoken. So we took her to a neurologist, and he did a genetic test, and in a few months we got, a horrible diagnosis of multiple sulfatase deficiency. So like you said, it's very rare, ultra rare. There's less than, we know of about 100 patients in the world. And I'm sure there's more than that, but that's what we know. And basically the doctors, she was diagnosed, and then we went to see a specialist in Jackson at Children's. And on the drive up there, my husband and I were like, okay, they're going to tell us it's terrible news. It's fatal. She's going to die, but we're going to take her somewhere and we're going to do something. And that was kind of our feeling at that point. He's going to tell us to go to St. Jude or go somewhere, or you go to a doctor and they try something. My mom has stage 4 cancer, which is also fatal. And she's still alive, I think 6 years later, and she's had chemo. She went to Houston and had treatment. And so that was in my head. I was like, okay, we go to the doctor and she gets the treatment. And so we got up there and he said, I'm sorry. He said, I'm going to talk to you about palliative care, which is like hospice. And basically, you're going to watch her die. So that didn't, of course, was terrible news. And I still can't accept it to this day. It's almost 5 years later. Still can't accept that. And so we started down a path of, is something possible? Like, is science even have the ability to fix this? Because you can't fix heart disease, you can't fix, autism, you can't fix some forms of cancer. Can you really even fix this? And so we quickly figured out, after we flew to Europe, met with doctors, that it's a single gene disorder, and they can fix it. With single gene disorders, you can fix the gene throughout the body through what's called gene therapy. And so once we figured that out, we started a foundation and started down that path.
Wow. Man, I mean, you're already setting yourself up for really bad news, when it's your child especially, and then to be blindsided by that is, man, that's awful. Like, there just aren't words.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's one of the, when I knew something was wrong with her, and, because you kind of have this mom's intuition, it's like, she's not quite where the other kids are. And, just, there's something off. I had in my mind, like, maybe she'll be developmentally delayed. Like maybe, she'll be stuck at 12, or she'll grow up and she won't, and we'll have to take care of her, but like, she'll grow up. Like, so, and that was hard. That was in my mind, that was like, that was kind of the worst case scenario. And then when he told me all of that, I was like, man, I couldn't have dreamed this up. I didn't know anything about it. It wasn't something that was in my wheelhouse at all.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And to be able to say, 100 cases that you know of, and sure there may be some more, but like 100 in the world, like
Yeah.
that's nothing,
Yeah.
So you started the United MSD Foundation in
Mhm.
order to start to fund some therapy research,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
yeah.
So we realized, because of that number, because there was not very many patients at that time, we thought there was like 20. I mean, we really didn't know. Um, they said, the doctors are like, there's no forward movement on this because there's no money in it. So
Mhm.
diseases are brought forward and treatments are brought forward because businesses has to make money. And so pharmaceutical companies, scientists create the treatment, and then pharmaceutical companies buy it, and that's how it gets pushed forward. So they
Mhm.
were like, that's not going to happen with your disease unless you fund it. And so, yeah, it was
Mhm.
like, well, what do you mean we fund it? Like we write you a check? I mean, like we had this whole like, and I remember talking to one of the scientists, because I had no idea about numbers or anything. I'm like, we're
Mhm.
talking about like $5,000 or like
Right.
$100,000. Like, how much do these things cost? And they threw numbers around like crazy. But one of the scientists that we met with in Ireland, we were sitting there with them, and I was like, so he had an idea for a treatment, and I said, how much would it cost? And he's like 150,000, and I'm like, well, could we make that like in payments? Cause it's like 90 days, same as cash. And he looked at me like, he's like, you're making a joke. I'm like, no.
No,
Yeah.
I'm serious. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, it's life, kids are going
Yeah.
to die. So when you're talking about money, to me, it's just nothing, it's
Yeah.
like money should not stand in the way of kids living or dying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's even more heartbreaking that, it's a business. And so if there's
Right.
no money to be made, then oh well, it's not of interest. Why Ireland? What made you choose Ireland?
Yeah, and actually, it was that first trip was to the UK. So yes, so the so the doctors that had found the gene, one group of them were in Italy, and one group were in Germany.
Mm,
And so when we were diagnosed, we started talking to a dad that lives in Ireland. That's where the Ireland thing came in. And so he had actually started the first foundation, and he's the one, he had reached out to the scientists to begin with. And, and when I talked to him on Skype, he said, look, we need time and money. And he explained this whole thing about like, we're going to fund the science. And I really didn't believe him at first. I was like, there's no way that the science is really there. That's what I thought in the beginning. I was like,
yeah,
because it just seemed like impossible. Like, why wouldn't they help these kids if it was possible?
it's there. Yeah.
So I was skeptical. And so, I was like, well, let me go talk to the doctors themselves. And so he said that the doctors were going to be in the UK in July. So she was diagnosed in May 9th. And in July, I think it was like July 5th or 6th, they were going to be at a conference, at a doctor's conference on lysosomal diseases. And so, he's like, hey, they're going to be at this conference. And I'm like, well, let's go. Like, let's go meet with them. And he's like, okay, let me see. And he had a friend that was running that conference. And, so we flew to Europe and sat in the courtyard of this conference that's all doctors, all scientists, and waited for them to have lunch. And then they came out and met with us.
Oh
So,
wow.
and we sat around a circle, and, and that's when they first started talking about, numbers. And they were like, look, this isn't going to be easy. And one of the doctors told me right then, he said, you need to understand what you're doing is not going to help your child. It takes
Mm,
it takes too long. He said, I admire you for doing this, but I don't want you to be unrealistic. And I started to cry, and Tom was sitting next to me, and he was like, you know, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's
yeah.
got to do it. That's kind of how and then the next year we did go to Ireland. The dad in Ireland had a scientific conference there, had all the scientists there. And so we went there the next year.
How do you get through that, Amber? Like, beside like the motivation to save your child initially, and then to kind of find out like, well, that might not be the case because time is of the essence. And so then you choose, well, we're going to continue forward for the future. But how do you have, two other girls, you have a business that you're running, you have a marriage, how do you get through that?
I think that I use, the finding the getting to the clinical trial is my coping mechanism. I think it's the way that I've found to deal with this. I mean, I just, like I said, I can't accept it. Acceptance has not come yet. And I watch her struggle every single day just to get through the day. And so the only way that I can watch that and kind of participate is
Mhm.
to, be part of something that's going to be bigger than her. Um, and I have a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
I've always have. I always have, like, maybe she'll make it into the clinical trial.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. How could you not,
Yeah. So
hope
that
that?
drives me. And and now we're the families, when they're diagnosed, they call us, and we have these Skype meetings and these Zooms, and it's like they're like, what do we do? Where do we go?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, nowhere yet, but so they're going through that same thing I went through, where it's like, what do you mean? We don't do
Hmm.
anything. And now I'm like, well, you can help, you can fundraise. We do have doctors who are specialists in this now that we've most of us are sent our kids to, like in Children's Hospital of Philadelphia has become like a specialist center.
Hmm.
So we have a lot of resources. We have clinical guidelines. We have all kinds of care resources. And someday we will have a clinical trial. And so that's what drives me, is when I think, when I have those calls with families, I can say, look, you can go to this clinical trial, you can go to that clinical trial, look these up, and there will be hope, so that's the
Yeah.
driving thing.
One of my favorite saying is be the person that you needed when you were
Yeah.
younger. And I think you are being the person that you needed when this all started. And so that's priceless. While
Mhm.
you don't have like, here, this is going to fix everything, you
Right.
at least have information and empathy and ability to relate. And so I mean, that's priceless for those families that are going through this. That's amazing, Amber. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's much better than it was. I mean, it will be better even more so later, but yeah, that's these families deserve that. I mean, they're given terrible news. They need to have some support.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, my little sister had some pretty severe physical disabilities. Mentally, she was fine. But being a sister of a special needs child is a unique situation to be in. So tell me about your older girls and how they handle being Willow's sisters.
So each one of them kind of handles it differently. My 14-year-old that is closest to her in age, she, she just it's kind of a normal thing to her. So she's just like, she'll get in her face and she'll talk baby talk to her. She loves to, um, be in the middle of everything, and Jenna tries to include her. Um, so she's just like her sister. Now, my oldest, she struggles more with it. So she, I think, um, really kind of avoids her, which is sad, just because it's so heartbreaking, which I totally get. I totally get. You look at Willow, and it's heartbreaking.
Mhm.
They hear when she's choking, and when she's not breathing well, we have to take her to the hospital. It's feels like it's a crisis here all the time. We have nurses, so we have 2 8-hour nurse shifts a day. So we have nurses coming in our house, so there's never like any much privacy. It's like
Mhm.
somebody's here all the time. So I think it's hard for her, and I think she's interned. She does childcare at the high school, and she loves those kids, and I think she has kind of transferred that love for Willow onto those kids, because it's so hard to deal
Mhm.
with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can relate to that too, because while my sister didn't have as severe, there were times where she went through a lot of surgeries and she went through some serious situations, and it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's painful, and so when you're younger, it's harder to know how to process that. And even though
Yeah.
she's older, she's still younger, and so
Yeah.
I can understand that.
Yeah, I think, a lot of avoidance, and yeah, just not wanting to see it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So you mentioned the struggling breathing, and what other physical issues does Willow have as a result of the MSD?
Yeah, so just kind of scientifically, what's happened is, this one gene that she has a bad gene in every cell in her body, and so the cells are dying basically throughout her body, and so it's very similar to what happens with Alzheimer's or dementia. So when the cells die, depending on where they're dying, that piece of your body stops working, and so the central nervous system was kind of in the brain where the hardest hit. So she stopped walking pretty quickly. Like she was diagnosed in May, and by December she couldn't walk anymore. And then, she stopped being able to move her hands. She really can't move voluntarily at all. We had to get a feeding tube. She stopped being able to swallow. Um, I think it was like that next year. So within a year, we got a feeding tube. Um, she can't, because she can't swallow, your saliva in your mouth, she
Mhm.
struggles with that. That's probably one of her biggest struggles. So she can't lean back very far. If she lays on her back, she chokes. So we have a suction machine, and then we spend a lot of time with her kind of over. She bends over.
Mhm.
She is developing scoliosis, partly because of her disease, but also because she can't move and sits in a chair. um, she Her hips, one of her hips is moving because of the scoliosis. Um, so basically everything in her body. The only thing that works well right now is her heart. So she does not have any heart problems, but everything else, lungs are declining. Um, her bones, she's just,
Yeah.
it's a total body disease. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Do
Yeah.
you feel like the numbers of cases are increasing, or is it or maybe
Uh,
diagnoses are
yeah.
increasing?
Yeah. So the diagnosis. So getting the diagnosis, it's typically like 6 years to get a diagnosis.
Oh.
So it's crazy amount of time. So we have a family that got diagnosed last year, I believe. They live in Missouri. They have two children that were 6 and 8 at the time. And they had a different kind of version of MSD. So theirs looked like autism. Both children were diagnosed autistic. Really no huge physical problems other than small stature and large spleen, a couple other things. And the dad is a pulmonologist, so he's a well-educated doctor. Mom is a great mother, like very involved in her kids, pushes, does all the right things. And it took them like 6 years, maybe even 8 years to get a diagnosis. So you think about educated family with resources, you think about like other families that don't have those kind of resources. They're going to have a hard time getting a diagnosis because it's that one gene. You have 25,000 genes, and so when something goes wrong, somebody has to be like an investigator, like a detective, and kind of figure it out. And if you don't have that doctor who's going to do that, then you as a parent have to push it. And that's hard. It's hard, and it's expensive sometimes. I mean, not, insurance will cover like what they call a microarray, which just kind of checks for big gene problems.
Mhm.
And then you really need a full exome is what you need to have, but that costs a lot of money, and a lot of insurance don't pay for them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And we don't know, like I don't know of a single patient in Australia or in China. I mean, like, that there's got to be MSD kids over there, but just because of language stuff and
Yeah.
healthcare, they're just not getting diagnosed.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned that dad being a pulmonologist. You've taken some classes yourself to kind of help your
Yeah.
education with this. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I have a business degree, not a biology degree. I actually flunked biology in the 8th grade. I hated it. I didn't do well with the whole frog dissection thing. I didn't like biology at all. Really didn't like science. And so I went through high school taking the very basics. And then when I was in college, you had to take one science, and I took astronomy. So like I was like, yeah, not a science person. So when this happened, it's all science. And so I'm on calls about science, and while I can Google and I can look, and I've had people sit here and like, I don't know if you know Geneva, she sat there and tried to explain it to me, and I've gathered a lot of information over time. People have told it to me 500 times. I really felt like I needed kind of a base kind of science. So I went back through and took biology. I took chemistry, took organic chemistry, and I'm now taking biochemistry, which is kicking my butt.
Yuck.
Just trying to understand. It's much harder on what am I, 44? My old brain does not memorize things like I did when I was younger.
Not only are you older, but you got just a little bit more on your plate.
I just take one class at a time. I did take genetics, was my favorite class, of course, and so I did fairly well in that.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's I think I like to we like to think that we as mothers we would do everything we can for our kids, and we would, but not everyone would have gone to these lengths, Amber. And so kudos to you for that, and again, not just for you and Willow, but for the future children too, because you're really making a big impact on so many families right now, and then in the future as well. That's just incredible.
Thank you. And I wouldn't, like the other families that don't do all of this, I mean, taking care of these children is like a full-time thing. I mean, some of our families have two children, or one family has three children that have MSD. And so and I've talked to them about like, how do you do, and they can accept it better than I can, so it's kind of I don't know if I would recommend this.
Catch-22.
Yeah, it's not, one, I'm not, probably participating in her life as much as I should. And two, it's a lot of freaking work, and it's just totally like sabotage our whole life. Yeah. Hijacked, I guess would be a better word.
Yeah.
So I think in the beginning when we were talking about prepping for this, I'm like, it's hard for me to even talk without talking about it.
Yeah.
I can't even have a conversation. Like the kids, my husband are like so sick of me. Everybody that I talk to, it's like, this is what we talk about.
Yeah, well, understandably, but I can see that too, and I agree. That was certain no ill thoughts to families who don't, because the mental capacity it takes to be able to just deal with that and handle that, and I mean, a special needs child in general is tough, but to know that the likelihood of them surviving isn't, just all those things is enough as it is. So, but you really are.
And I think a lot of it is the entrepreneur part.
Yeah.
So like, I jump probably before thinking too seriously about it. I'm just like, oh yeah, it's possible. And you just jump in the deep end.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an entrepreneur thing, that, it's just like you just jump and do. And so I think that is a big part of it. Like if I thought through it too much, I could tell myself 5 million reasons why this wouldn't work.
Sure.
Like raising $2 to $3 million is the first one.
Yeah, so that was actually, I'm glad you said that. That was my next question. So, you talked about the 150,000 and all that. So what, what is do you have the United Amnesty Foundation? And so what is the number now?
Yeah, so that that number, it's like building a house. That number just gets bigger and bigger every day, every year. And it used to be 3 million was our goal a couple of years ago. And I was like, okay, $3 million. That's what the doctor told me. And he said, if you had $3 million right now, you would have a treatment in 18 months. And so I was like, okay, well, let's get $3 million. So that was a very rough number. And there's a lot that goes into a clinical trial. So right now we're looking at probably 5 million. We've raised over 1 million of that. And so what we realized is like, we're just not going to raise, I shouldn't say this. I'm not sure that I could raise enough money to pay for the whole thing. So what what we've created as the plan is kind of 3 different avenues, backup plans, plan Bs. And so we will continue to try to raise the money for the clinical trial. And the B lane is, let's try to make this as attractive as possible for pharmaceutical companies. So they aren't coming after us. We have to seek them out. But if we do everything, if we do like all the biomarker development, natural history studies, like we're making it like an easy button so that all the hard work is done, and package it up with a bow and say here, and really don't ask for anything in return other than please just spend the money to carry it forward. There is some attractiveness to that because, we've taken all the risk out. We know that we have a treatment that works. We have all the people in place. We know where the clinical trial can be done. And so I think that's kind of our plan B if we don't raise the money. And so right now, like this year, our goal is 600,000 we're trying to raise this year.
Okay.
We're probably 75 to 100,000 into that already. And we've got to pay for a natural history study, we're checking these boxes of things that need to be done in order to get a pharmaceutical partner. And we have one that we're talking to. I'm very hopeful about it, but it's a long road. So can't say for sure that's going to happen.
Wow. Yeah. So what do y'all do throughout the year to be able to reach that $600,000
Yeah.
goal?
So, when I first started this, and you come from the nonprofit field, so you know way more than I do, but I was like, oh, well, I'll just tell a story and people give money, which they did. Like a lot of people gave money, but like a couple thousand people gave money, but I need like 200,000 people to give money. So, I realized, and anything anybody said, I was like, we went here and I took Willow here and I dragged her out to the seafood festival and we did like anything anybody said, I went. I mean, we did restaurant nights and made, negative money because I ended up buying dinner for my family. It's like we did all kinds of things. And then I got some help kind of, I think 1.5 years, 2 years in. And, the first thing was like, stop doing all these events. You're going to go. So we do the zebra run, which is in April. Well, it's actually usually in February. This year it's in April because of COVID. And then we had been doing Wigging Out for Willow in New Orleans, but we're not, doing that because of COVID. So we're going to be doing some online campaigns. We do really well on social media, on Facebook. And so I think we're going to do a Father's Day thing. It's our 5th anniversary. So probably do something in August. So, just different things on trying to just build awareness and get the word out.
Yeah. Raising money is funny. You have to really look at what you're doing and if it's working and like, I've worked at Habitat forever. And so I know that. And then my dumb self, I in October is Dwarfism Awareness Month. And I was like, and we just started a chapter, an LPA chapter, Little People America chapter in Mississippi. And I'm the president. And I was like, let's raise some money for this chapter. I'll sell these rubber bracelets. And didn't just assume that because it's like a tiny rubber bracelet that you could just stick it in an envelope and mail it. And quickly found out that that doesn't work like that, and so ended up in the negative from this fundraiser. And then in hindsight, I'm like, Angela, you know better than this. You knew this wasn't gonna work. Why didn't you? But again, I think it's that entrepreneur thing where you just jump before you.
Yeah, you're like, just like, really... just try it. Yeah. Yeah. Let's just try this. Yeah, we've tried a lot. It haven't worked. and everything kind of builds the awareness. Somebody walking around with that bracelet builds awareness. But it's definitely, we had raised, I think, like 300,000, maybe 200,000, 250,000 or something at that point. And I asked the consultant, I was like, I'm never going to get to the $3 million this way. Like, how do I do this? And, and then she said, she's like, you need to stop with all the events. And it makes sense to me now, but at the time, and that's kind of what everybody wants to do. It's like you start talking to people and they're like, oh, I'll do this for you, or I'll do, which if they'll do it, great. Like if you'll do a car wash, great, go do it. We just can't participate and I can't drag Willow out
Right.
really at all now.
Right. Yeah. Birthday fundraisers on Facebook are an
Yes.
excellent way.
Yes. So Cure MSD on Facebook. So follow us there. You can do a birthday fundraiser, which they work really well. And, we've raised a lot of money with that. And it's not anything, you're not having to directly ask people. It's not so intimidating, but you just post it on there and people are super generous.
Yeah, that's one of the best things to come out of Facebook is those things for sure.
Yeah.
It makes it very easy for the fundraiser and then also for the nonprofit.
And Facebook isn't taking any of the money right now, so every time somebody donates $1, we get that whole dollar.
Yeah, which is crazy. I never would have thought that. I knew they did it at first, but I thought for sure that would go away very quickly.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, and it kind of scares me sometimes how dependent on Facebook we are, because we do a lot of fundraising. I need to figure out the TikTok thing, because that's apparently like
don't ask me, I got nothing on that.
People, you have to ask your kids.
Yeah. Exactly. By the time I figure it out, it'll be like old news.
Right. I know. I'm like, how do they make those videos? Like, I mean, my kids sit there and watch it 24/7, and like, how do they make it? Like, do they make each one of those? Like, you got to go through like a whole production to make, versus like hours. Facebook, you could just do like a video.
Yeah. It takes like literal hours to make those videos.
Really?
Yeah.
Just such a time. I mean, to think Facebook's a time suck.
I know. Exactly.
Yeah.
So Amber, how do you make time for yourself?
That's the tough one. So I'm really good at the other stuff, but that's the tough thing. I do. Well, first of all, I have a therapist. Let me just say that, and I think that's some it's like a taboo thing that people don't talk about. Every single person in the world needs a therapist. There's such a huge help, and people should just get one and be amazing how different we will all be if we all went therapy. And then I do a massage. I try to do one twice a month. And like a massage envy, so it's not super expensive. It's like $100 a month. It's well worth it. And then I try to walk in the morning, and try to, I have a big bathtub. I take a bath every night. Just try to chill and relax. But I need to put some effort into it, because it's not, you know how we are. It's like last, moms are last.
Yeah, and especially with all you have on your plate. But I'm glad that you do make the effort and are intentional about it. That's excellent. And all of those things are things I recommend to my clients, because they're kind of the low-hanging fruit. Like they're the easier things to do. The therapy, the baths, and they do help. They're not magic, but they definitely do help.
Yeah, it always kind of contributes to, I think you make a few deposits into yourself and into your family, which is the other one that I struggle with. I gotta keep depositing into them.
Yeah. So how does it feel to have is she in college or going to college?
She's 18. She's finishing her senior year, and then she'll go to college in the fall. Yeah, it's crazy. And it's a crazy time, with her being 18, and like, she's like, I'm an adult. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't just do what you want. You still live in this house.
Yeah. I remember saying those words though. I remember saying those words to my mom.
I was a baby when I graduated. I'm like Jenna, so our birthdays are in September. So I graduated from high school when I was 17. So I didn't turn 18 until I went to college. And so it wasn't quite as weird. Very weird being 18 and, she's just like, I'm an adult. Oh. But yeah, the other day she did something and she's like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to say, in an email or something like that. I was like, I thought you were an adult. Yeah. So it's tough. And I was telling my therapist, I was like, you know, but Tom and I both are like, okay, you're 18, so like go. You know? And she's like, you can't do that. You're, you know, connected to these children for the rest of your life. And I was like, oh no, but they're great. They're great kids.
My saying, and I hope you don't mind the language, but my saying is damn kids. Like whenever my friends and I are you know, talking about our damn kids, it's like damn kids.
Yeah. Yeah, they come up with some stuff.
You love them, but good God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Amber, so how can people connect with you, connect with the United MSD Foundation, so on and so forth?
Well, I am on Facebook, Amber Olsen with Olsen, and I'm on the other stuff too, but I don't check any of that. And our Facebook page is Cure MSD, and we have an Instagram and a Twitter too. So any of those, or on LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn.
Yeah. I need to spend more time on LinkedIn. There's just so many things, but
there's a lot of things. It's good for, yeah, my recruiter hat, you know, that we use it all the time for that. So I think that's why I have an affinity to it. And I just like mostly no drama on LinkedIn. And when people do bring drama, they kind of get cut up. So yeah.
Good deal. Well, you know, thank you for all that you're doing. You know, your work is there's just no measurement to the impact it's going to have, and not even just for the families directly, but you know, the impact that the kids eventually, when the kids that are cured, and the impact they'll be able to make in the world, and so on and so forth. So thank you so much for all that you're doing, and thank you again for meeting with me. I know that you're obviously very busy, and but you were one of the first moms that I thought of when I knew I wanted to make this month Mom Month, because you are just incredible, and I so appreciate you and all you do.
Well, thank you, and thank you for doing this platform. It's great, and you know, we moms got to stick together.
That's for sure. All right, so we'll have all the information in the comments so that anybody wants to, you know, reach out and connect, feel free. Highly recommend donating your Facebook fundraiser to the Cure MSD. It's, again, a very easy way to make a big difference for children who really, that's the only path. So many other conditions have multiple paths and foundations and such, and this one just doesn't. And so you're really making a huge difference by doing so. And thank you all for watching, and have an amazing evening.